Minecraft villages, living in peaceful bliss for so long, unbothered by the rest of the world until oh no, what? That's not good. But wait, how did we get here? Why are they here? Why do they hate villagers? All of those questions will be answered in today's video of the history of pillagers in Minecraft. Our story starts with you, the player, because for thousands and thousands of years before world generation, villagers lived in peace and harmony, constantly evolving, adapting, and inventing new ways to better themselves. Villagers lived a simple life of growing food and owning livestock, even starting their own economy by using emeralds as a way of trade. Hey, do you want this rotten flesh for that shiny rock you got there? Yes, said a villager. Life was good, but everything changed when the player attacked. Yes, you, the player, many players. The players who needed to find a village on the first night to sleep at for protection. The players are the reason why pillagers exist. The player that stole out of the pockets of the villagers. The player that ran over the crop fields. The player that stole the bed because they were too lazy to make their own. The player that took the furnace. The player that took the anvil. The player that took the lantern because it just looked cool. Our story goes like this. A player spawned into the world looking for resources. Over the horizon, he spotted a village by the river. He decided to stay here for the night, and the villagers welcomed him in as one of their own. The next day, the player said, "Geez, this is some really nice land, guys," and decided to settle their house right across the river from the village. The player and the villagers lived across from each other for a couple weeks with no issues. All was good, but one day the player walked into the village and said, "Hey guys, I got something really cool to show you. Hop in this minecart." The villagers said, and got in. The player took two villagers to this dark, empty, underground, shallow room. This is what most of us know as a village breeder. Here, the villagers were forced to breed, creating new villagers. After a couple weeks of forcefully breeding, the player locked all of the villagers in a single one-by-one room, where they would have to produce goods for him. At this point, the player walked up to the old village across the river and said, "I don't want to play with you anymore." And the villager said, The player then proceeded to grab a flint and steel and started setting the village ablaze, placing a couple TNT blocks here and there to speed up the process. And only after the village was left in shambles, with no houses standing, our player would go through the village one last time, killing all of the remaining villagers, slicing through them with his diamond sword. However, there is one glimmer of light in this story, one beacon of hope out of everything. There was one villager, just one, that survived. One villager that was able to slip away in the middle of the night and run away from the player, terrified of what would happen if the player caught her. Our villager ran and ran and she ran until her legs simply could not support her anymore. Keep in mind that villagers for thousands of years lived peaceful, simple lives for so long, protected by the walls of the village. I mean, do you ever see a villager out on their own in the wild? Of course not. I mean, they are literally called villagers because they belong in villages. They can't live on their own. So being asked to survive on her own was a struggle. Many nights she went hungry, and she was always on the run. Many nights she was chased by zombies. Many nights the only food she had was spare berries that she would find on thorn bushes. This was without a doubt the hardest point in her life. The world was so much bigger than she originally thought. She had lived her whole life in the village without any worry of the outside world. And now, she was on the outside. She had no idea where to go. She was hoping and praying that one day, maybe just one day, she would find a village in the distance that was just like her old village. But after 2 months, she had traveled through a forest, a jungle, a desert, and now she was somehow even in an Arctic tundra, and there was nothing to be seen. No village, no happy ending. She saw a couple weird temple-like buildings on her journey, but decided to stay away. During this time, she was also on high alert, trying in her best way to avoid anyone or anything that reminded her of the player she met all that time ago. This story just makes me sad. It makes me want to cry. Our poor villager. One day while she was traveling through the harsh and cold winter weather, she passed out from exhaustion. She was freezing and just could not take it anymore. It wasn't until much later that she awoke. She was in a dazed and confused state of mind, but she was warm. This is weird, she thought. It was easy to tell that she was no longer out in the harsh, snowy weather. Once her senses came to her, she was able to tell she was trapped inside of some sort of snow iron cage. On the other side of the cage, there was a ladder which seemed to lead to an exit. For a couple hours, she tried to get out, but but to no avail. You have seen the way villagers' arms work. There was no way in hell she was getting out of this cage. Eventually, someone made their way down the ladder. When this person turned around, the villager noticed it was a witch. She was always told to stay away from witches when she lived in the village growing up. She knew that they were trouble. The witch simply let out a Our villager just had to watch as the witch would come and go from the room. The witch would seemingly use magic and concoct potions. The villager was trapped there for what seemed an eternity. She could no longer tell the day, nor did she have any sense of time. The witch started eventually using her potions and witchcraft on the villager. She was constantly experimented on by the witch. She had been poisoned, turned invisible, set on fire, and just broken down. She had very little fight in her at this point. There was one night in particular where the experimentation was different. The witch threw some type of potion on the villager. Maybe it was melatonin, maybe it was coke, we don't know. But our villager was drowsy and quickly fell asleep. When she had awoken, she realized she was no longer warm. She took one look around and she was outside of an igloo. She realized this is where she was being held captive, but she was confused. Why was she free, she thought. After looking around for quite a bit, she could tell something was different, and that something was her. When she looked down, she noticed she looked quite a bit different. Her once brown laced villager garment was replaced. It was replaced with a purple garnish. She looked at her skin, and instead of the light beige color it was before, it was now an off-white gray. She was now the thing she never wanted to be. She was a witch. The once peaceful, loving, wheat-growing villager was now a hideous and sad witch. The evil inside of her grew, and with that, frustration would soon grow. However, if she had any hope left to become a villager again, she realized she had to find somebody that could help her and revert what has been done to her. She traveled for days and days and nothing would come up until one day, one gloomy day, the witch found a village. It was just a random village in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a plains biome. She couldn't believe it. She ran as fast as she could. She thought, finally, this was the place that was gonna help her. This is the place that she could stay. She approached the villagers in the center of town and tried to ask for help. No, said the villagers, and they sent an iron golem after her, and she had to run into the woods. Disappointed and sad, the witch thought maybe she could go to a different village, so she tried this multiple times, and every single time she tried this, she had to run back into the woods. No village was going to take her in. No village wanted any business with the witch. The villagers couldn't trust the witch, so she was left on her own again. Eventually, after trying at maybe 4 or 5 villages, she had given up all hope. There was no helping her. She was too far gone. She was a hater now, and hated everything. Over time, from being mistreated over and over again, evil had grown inside of her. Our former villager wanted revenge. Revenge on everyone. She wanted revenge on the player who mistreated her all that time ago. She wanted revenge on the villagers who wouldn't let her in because she looked different. So she found an abandoned hut in the swamp that she would call home. Here, she discovered her new powers as a witch. She learned that she could concoct potions much like the witch that trapped her did before. The witch took her time honing her skills, becoming better at potion making. The witch would find a pig outside in the swamp, and she would take him in as her pet. What she did with this pig was she experimented on him, naming him Piggy. She would learn how to make poison potions and regeneration potions, but this is not what she was seeking. As good as this was, she was looking for a way to use Piggy to take out the villagers for revenge on them and everyone else who had mistreated her. After a couple weeks, on one faithful rainy night, she made a great discovery. I mean, it had to be raining. That's when all the drama happens, right? The witch discovered a new potion creation, one that has never been seen before and one that will probably never be seen again. With this potion, she used it on Sir Piggles, and what would happen is he would turn into a man-eating beast. The same man-eating beast that would later be known as a Ravager. With this new potion, the possibilities were endless. She could finally get revenge on all the people who did her wrong. For the first time in ages, the witch, the villager, whatever you want to call her, she was happy again. The next day, she put her plan in motion. She took her pet Ravager and led him to the very first village that turned her down. She sent him straight into battle to face the Iron Golem, and in an instant, all of the villagers' jaws dropped. Do they even have jaws? I don't know, but they dropped. The Ravager ripped through the Iron Golem, killing him and leaving only a flower left behind. Nobody could believe this. This was the only protection that the villagers had for so long, and it worked every single time, but not this time. The witch would then take one of her potions and throw it at a villager, and in a mere instant that villager would turn into a pillager. She would then go through the village one by one, hunting every single villager in that town down and turning them into a pillager. By the end of the night, she had made every single villager in that village into a pillager. And after she converted the entire village into pillagers, she ordered them to destroy it. The villagers who would turn into pillagers now had to destroy their own home, and they did. They left it in shambles. They left it into a ghost town. With her newly found army, she would take them and destroy multiple other villages, killing anyone or anything that got in her way. This happened for several weeks, and the witch was happy with every single village that she took out, but she wasn't satisfied. Why was that, she thought? Why wasn't this satisfying her? And then she realized it's because she has not gotten revenge on the player. So with her huge army at this point, she ordered them to set up pillager outposts all over the world. The same pillager outposts that you see in your world are because of this witch, and all of this happened because of the player. Legend has it that the witch is still roaming this earth, riding on the back of her trusty steed Piggy, sending her armies to hunt down any player in any village that they find, all in hopes to find that very first player. Maybe one day you will find the witch in your world and her beloved Piggy, and you'll do this to them. Hey you, that was an awesome video, right? Consider subscribing or check out any of my other videos. Peace.